Yo pues hermano.
From Cafeteria Film Studios in Miami, Florida, Phresh presents Que Bola, where we talk to various movers and hustlers in South Florida who are popping off and succeeding, and in the process, how they're influencing the 305 culture. My name is Darwin Figueroa, and I am your host. I hope you enjoy this, and let's get into it, all right? Listo.
Hey, what's up, people? I hope everybody out there doing good, and I hope that you are flourishing. Considering that churches and religion are a part of South Florida, I decided to reach out to one of my oldest friends, Pastor Cardenas, to chop it up. Me and him go back long ways, and we tend to bump heads when it comes to the topic of religion. But in this talk, we decided to focus on what it is that churches are actually providing to the community in exchange for the patronage that they receive. Hope you like this talk, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, let's get into it. Listo. All right, so we're in the studio. Well, actually, we're not in the studio. We are in, what's the name of your church, Carlos?
Christ Fellowship. Christ Fellowship. We're actually at the Palmetto Bay campus.
This is a special episode of Que Bola. I have one of my oldest friends, basically since childhood. I've known you since what? You're like 3 years old?
Well, since I remember life, I remember you being around. So
yeah, so
it's been
it's been a long time.
My entire life.
So one of my oldest friends on the podcast today, Carlos Cardenas, he's also campus pastor at Christ Fellowship Church in Palmetto Bay.
Palmetto Bay campus, correct.
Palmetto Bay. So being that I know your life story, and the people people who are listening don't know your life story, let's start off from the beginning. We both grew up in a church environment, right? Since we're like little kids, that's how we knew how we met each other, since we were like 3 years old and like pre-K toddlers in church. And we grew up in a church environment. Both of us went in separate ways, you know, and when it comes to like spirituality, you have become a pastor, which is like, it's a little like what? And then I'm just like on the other opposite side, I'm still spiritual, but I'm just not as devoted in my particular fellowship and my beliefs. But I wanted to know like how your journey to where you're currently at transpired, you know? So you're from Miami originally, right?
Yeah, so basically, you know, obviously to make the long story short, I was born and raised in Miami. I did live in North Carolina, obviously, as you know, Darwin. I was just about to turn 16 years old, and I lived in North Carolina for 5 years. Long story short, my dad got a job transfer with the company that he was with at the time.
That was Velda, right?
Yeah. It's a milk company.
Yeah, everybody knows Velda.
Yeah,
throwback.
Yeah, so he was a truck driver back then. My older sister lived in North Carolina already. So her and her husband, they still live there. And so I think that was one of the reasons why it led us to move to North Carolina. But with that being said, you know, I ended up coming back to Miami. I graduated from FIU. So how did I get here? Growing up in a Christian home, I felt from a young age, you know, I felt God. I didn't go to church because I had to. I went to church because I wanted to, but I had to as well. You know, we had no choice.
Yeah, I didn't have a choice.
But I loved going to church. I loved going to church.
I wouldn't say that I wanted to go to church when I was going now.
Come on. I
used to like going to church because it was fun, because I would go see you, and then I go see like Josh and Rick and all our friends that we grew up with, and we would just like party, like play. Like it was more like a meetup to like play with the boys than it was actually to go to church. You know what I mean?
And I think for me, I enjoyed going to church probably
even at that young age.
Probably for some of the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and obviously there were moments when you're
what was
kids
the wrong reasons?
Oh, I mean, you don't go to church just for fun and playing around and you know, jokes, but it was fun. Like the fellowship, the community there was built. Even the things that you learned, I think there were good moral principles, moral lessons that were learned.
Yeah, but okay. So you're talking about this from the perspective of a pastor. I'm talking about it from like perspective of Carlos from high school. When you were going to church in high school, where you're thinking, oh, the devotion and the fellowship, or you're thinking, oh, I want to go hang out with my friends and it's a safe environment and everybody knows me and it's a chill place for me to hang out where I don't have to like worry about like any beef or anybody or anything like that?
I think it's both and. For me, it was both and. Yeah. I think probably it's never a 50-50. It's never a perfect balance, but I think for me probably it was more the fellowship, more the hangout, more that, hey, this is a safe place, safe environment. You're not going to have some of the obstacles and some of the conflict that comes from being in other environments. So I think part of it, probably most of it, was that. But there was a part of it that I wanted to devote myself to God and to grow in God's ways. I think that there were seasons in my life that was greater, and seasons in my life that was less. And so depending on which season you're referring to, I can tell you, well, that was, there were seasons that I was really drifted from God, really, my relationship with God was
everybody
really stagnant.
wasn't saint from childhood, bro. You didn't grow up in childhood saintness.
And I'm not saying that I grew up my entire life saying, oh my gosh, I love God, I love Jesus, and I want to sing worship songs all the time.
24/7.
Yeah. So I had my seasons that were darker, or I was further away from God. But my plans in general, like my vision or my dreams in life, was to be a financial analyst. Was to
I didn't know that. I didn't know that that's what you wanted to do.
I graduated with a bachelor's degree. I went to seminary now, which is Bible school. But originally, I didn't go to Bible school.
I remember you were working at Wells Fargo.
Yeah, I was working at the bank, and I graduated from FIU, bachelor's degree. Did my 4-year degree in business management, and minored in finance. So for me, I felt like I was always very comfortable in with numbers, and to me, I wanted to do the financial world, like either Wall Street or whatever it looked like. I was gonna go for my Series 6, 63. Series 7, all the different licenses that you can get in that financial world. Yeah. So that was my focus. Yeah. At the same time, I was also very involved at church. And about 9 years ago, I came to Christ Fellowship, which is where I was involved in music. Both that you and I did. Yeah. We did music.
Yeah, we did music.
And I've always loved music. So, but I saw the church thing as not something as a vocation, not something that I would do full time, actually work for church, as something that you do for a living. So I saw it more of like just my service, a hobby, or something that you love to do, something you enjoy doing, and the way that you serve God. So I did worship, and I did it for 9 years. I was here for 9 years, and I did worship. And so long story short, there was an opportunity presented to me here at Christ Fellowship to come on staff part-time. So
as what?
As a worship band director for another campus, the campus that I was at before, which was West Kendall campus. So for those of you that don't know, Christ Fellowship operates at 7 campuses, and we're one church. Okay. In the church world, and I'm sure.
And all 7 campuses are spread out throughout South Florida, or
throughout Miami-Dade. So
so it's in Miami-Dade.
Our vision is Miami-Dade. Okay. And so all campuses, we have a campus here at Palmetto Bay, which is the founding,
main campus,
main church
headquarters.
Main church headquarters, whatever you want to call it.
I noticed walking in, there's a school also.
There's an academy. So school, Christ Fellowship Academy. Okay. So this model in the church world is called multi-site, where our model is this: we don't want to grow a church. We want to spread out the church, and so we want to target communities rather than having a big mega church. Nothing against mega churches. I'm not trying to say anything against that model. It's just a different model where we don't want Palmetto Bay, Palmetto Bay is a mega church, so it is.
It's considered a church. It is.
It is. It's
What's
considered
a mega church.
Different people will give you, I think people will give you different answers, but I would just say anything over 2,000 people is a mega church.
Service?
On a weekend, whatever, because we have Saturday night services, and that's 2,000, including kids, students, and everyone. So we're about 4,000, 4,100.
So then you got into Christ Fellowship through the devotion and through the music side. Yeah. Prior to that, were you at another church doing that?
I was. I obviously you know that I grew up in church. So in Miami, I was at a small Spanish church that you and I. That's where we met. Yeah. Then when I moved to North Carolina, I went to a church there that was very similar to Redentor. It's considered they're in the same denomination. Okay. Very alike. Very very similar. About the same size, same feel. Then when I moved back to Miami, I went to a mega church, which was another church, and that was Rey Jesus. And then I eventually left that church, and 9 years ago, I started coming to Christ Fellowship.
So from Rey Jesus, all right, because I know how you, like, when you came back from North Carolina, we were always like hanging out, but you always telling me to go to church, but I didn't know how, like, what you were doing at church. I know you and Manny, another friend of ours, were also working in church, but I didn't know what you guys were doing. I just thought that you guys were part of like audio visual or something like that, or like hanging out with, like, because I would always see you guys with the boards. I know you played piano, and I know Manny was like directing, singing, but I didn't know if it was a job. Because I never really considered people who were playing music at church were getting paid. I didn't think about it. I thought that everybody just like at church gave service and nobody got paid for anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So basically, obviously, in a church the size of Jesus and Christ Fellowship, you have a lot of volunteers. You have a lot of people that just serve and do not get paid. Yeah. And then at the same time, you also have staff people. You need staff people because you're managing or leading so many volunteers and so many different areas, and the complexities of that required for someone to be on staff. And so at the previous church that I was at with Manny, with one of our friends, he was our worship leader. You know, he would oversee the entire worship, and I was the band director. Now, my position, the entire time that I was there I was completely a volunteer. Yeah. So I served and I enjoyed it. You know,
so when you were at Jesus, you didn't get paid?
No, I was a volunteer.
Oh, I
served.
wasn't aware of that.
I served as a volunteer there. Okay. I did music, played piano, led the bands, was involved in that capacity. And then when I came here, I did the same thing. I started, doing the same thing here at Christ Fellowship. And then eventually a position was open for me, part-time position, to be a band director. And that was a fork in my life. That's where things kind of went a different direction for me. And God, I always tell people it was God, pursues. I think God pursues man. I don't think man pursues God. And we see it in the Bible. I think we're all sinners, sinful and far away from God. And I think God, in his sovereignty, he pursues us. And so God opened that door for me to come here and to become on staff. And so now I'm a pastor. So how did I get here? Well, little by little, that part-time position became a full-time because of, the ministry grew, the worship ministry. And then I ended up becoming an associate pastor at the campus that I was at. And once I became associate pastor, our campus pastor, developed me. We have a culture here at Christ Fellowship, which is very neat, that we love to develop within. And the best leaders are homegrown. And so we try to, build people up, develop them, and then position them in the places they need to be in.
So you would say that the turning point in your life to do this full time, because I remember when you were at Jesus doing music and stuff like that, you were still working your other job. You were still at the bank, I think you were at that time. And even when you came here, when was it that you said, okay, I'm going to leave like my other full-time employment to do this full-time? Because it's like, I've noticed that within like the church community, church isn't only like a job. It's also like a lifestyle, you know what I'm saying? So it's not like you're just gonna say, oh, let me go clock in 9 to 5, do this, and then I go home and I chill. No, it's like you're doing this like all your time, like full time. You know what I'm saying? So what was it that said, okay, I'm gonna stop doing things like half like doing it, and then like really gonna go in wholeheartedly into this particular pursuit?
For sure. I mean, I always tell people it's not a job, it's a calling. And so God has called you to do ministry. And to be honest with you, Darwin, from a young age, even as a kid, I always felt something. I did feel a connection with God that I felt was special. And I think it's because of God. And I did feel that I would be involved in church a lot. I just never saw myself as good enough or holy enough to see a pastor, because I think the position of clergy, the moment I almost dislike telling people that I'm a pastor, because the moment I tell people I'm a pastor, they're like, oh my goodness, I can't curse in front of you, or I can't drink this, or I can't, and I'm like, just be yourself. Like, I'm not an alien. I'm not someone different. I'm a sinner. I have, evil thoughts like everyone does. Sometimes I will say things that I shouldn't say. I get angry, and I think, which I love our generation growing up, I think that position of clergy, there's less of a gap of like, you're holy and untouchable.
Like holier than thou.
Exactly. Holier than thou. And I need to be different in front of you. And that's not what it is. I mean, the Bible says we are all sinners.
Yeah. And you say this to me and I look at you and I laugh, because like, I know you since I was a little kid, so I'm never going to like change who I am in front of you. So it's like, that's something different. But sometimes
that's
I do
different
notice
because you've seen it.
Yeah, because I've
the
grown
good
up,
and the bad.
Yeah, I've grown up
the
with
ugly,
you,
the
so,
messy,
like,
and all the stuff.
everything. So it's like it's a different perspective where I'm coming from. But I do see sometimes that like we'll be hanging or something, and then somebody will come around who's like, "Oh, that's Pastor Carlos," and you gotta be like super like on your P's and Q's. Like, dude, this dude's just a regular human. Like everybody else is a regular human. You know what I'm saying? So like I feel like nowadays that's been not clergy has been taken down a peg, but I think that like clergy has been like equated to just being a regular human nowadays. Like our generation is doing that.
It's going to the place that it needs to go to. Mm-hmm. It needs to go to that place.
Okay.
And I think that the more transparent that we are, and the more honest and vulnerable, I think it actually attracts people rather than pushes people away, because people are saying, man, that I can identify myself to that guy because he's a human being just like like myself. Sometimes I mess up as a father. Sometimes I mess up as a husband, as a follower of Christ. And even the Apostle Paul, who wrote a lot of the New Testament in the Bible, there's a part that says in 1 Timothy chapter 1 that he says, I am undeserving of God's grace because I am a chief of sinners. So he said, like, this is the man that God would use. You know, we believe that God inspired him to write a big portion of the New Testament, inspired by God. And he was even saying, I'm just as messed up as a lot of you guys are. Obviously, you know, to on the conversely, I do want to say that I have a responsibility as a pastor to be above reproach, and you know, my character.
What do you mean by be above reproach?
Like be above reproach, where okay, I'm not perfect, but I do need to set the example. I do need to not, you know, like.
You can't be like one of those crazy pastors who are stealing money out the church and stuff like that.
You know, integrity. Yeah. This is the one. You know, if looking at it in the world sense, in a secular sense, this is the one profession that your character will disqualify you, can disqualify you from your position. Yeah. You don't have that in any other place. Yeah. Mostly any other place. I mean,
basically anywhere. As long as you make money, they don't really care.
Yeah. And so obviously police officers need to, and people that serve our city, there's a certain level of character that needs integrity that needs to be displayed. Yeah. But I'll give you an example. If I have an affair, right? Yeah. If I have an affair, I'm gonna be let go of my position, and I know that. Yeah. And so there is that pressure that
but if you're the CEO of a company and you had an affair, it doesn't make a difference.
A police officer, like if you're
police officer doesn't matter.
If you're if your marriage is not going well and you have an affair as a police officer, they're not gonna fire you because of that. Yeah. You know, now I'm not wishing that for any police officer, and I want to make this very clear. I respect and honor police officers. In fact, we have so many of them that come to our church, and I meet with them all the time, and I know that they have other challenges that they've been open about to me that are harder, that are different than the pastoral role. But all that to say, going back to your initial question about clergy, how did I get here? You know, God opened the door. I prayed about it, and you know, it wasn't like God whispered to me or said anything, but I felt, it's time, go through that. But I felt like, you know what, I need to be obedient, and God clearly showed me the path that this is the way to go.
All right. Well, so touching on that, you're a pastor here in South Florida, right? So for you to be a pastor here in South Florida with the name like Carlos Cardenas, super easy, right? Because we're in South Florida, everybody's Latin, everybody has a Hispanic in them, or some kind of, you know, immigration from another country. So everybody kind of is familiar with that. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be Latin. You could be Haitian. You could be Brazilian. You could be from any part of the world. But in South Florida, we're intermingling, so we all are aware that the vast majority of us have just recently gotten here. Either we're first generation or second generation, at most third generation. You find a third generation Miami and it's like, wow, your family got here 3 generations ago. That's crazy. Like everybody here's just like, my dad just got off the boat yesterday. You know what I'm saying? That's where we're coming from. But South Florida is not a picture of the rest of the nation. So being a Hispanic clergyman in a role that's predominantly been played by Caucasians or by white people in the United States, how has that been? How have you been treated, like accepted into various places? And because I know you travel, so like when you meet up with other clergymen and things like that, what's that experience been like for you?
Yeah, I think that our country in general is transitioning and shifting to embracing and wanting more the multicultural and the diversity, and I really love that. And I think they have embraced, especially so just to tell you a little bit about, you know, even Christianity, even within Christianity there are certain denominations and certain differences, and I know you know this, and because you grew up in it, and so you have your Pentecostal, and you have your Baptists, your Presbyterians, Methodists. So I grew up, you know, Pentecostal,
yeah.
and now our church is a Baptist, part of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Okay.
And so even in that in the Baptist world, that, you know, that's an anomaly, you know, like Hispanic pastor,
yeah, I know.
Overall in our country. But even in the Baptist world, I can tell you, key influential leaders are embracing the diversity and wanting the diversity. And so, and at the same time, you represent your community. So if you go to North Carolina, a small town, and the community is mostly Caucasian, like, what are you gonna do to get diversity?
Yeah.
You know, we're
not
blessed.
much diversity.
Like we always say this, is our church a reflection of our community? And so what I love about Christ Fellowship, especially Palmetto Bay, in our church, we have 71 countries that are represented. Okay. 71 countries,
yeah, that's a lot.
Which is insane. But I can't have that expectation in South Carolina, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, or Gallenberg, Tennessee.
Yeah.
We can't have that expectation. But how do we create, how do we create and foster an environment that is diverse? And I think we are working at that. I don't think the church in general has done a great job in the past. In fact, they've terrible job, you know, and even in the Baptist world, awful in some ways, and it wasn't even godly. And I think we have transitioned and are trying to, we're getting there.
So you feel that we're in the transitioning period right now where different people from different walks of life are being accepted into.
Absolutely. And even in the Gospel Coalition is one. It's an organization of it's not denomination led. So you have different denominations. You have Pentecostals, you have Baptists, you have Presbyterians, and so Gospel Coalition, you know, they have done such a great job of, I don't want to say promoting, but placing people in high leadership roles that are African American or Hispanic or Asian. Or, you know,
a minorities.
And so they've done it. So it's not just, you know, the white man world.
Yeah, because that's kind of like where, when you think about pastors back in the day, it was just basically like a white-led type of congregation, you know, and by a white-led pastor. We grew up in the anomaly because we grew up in Miami, so our pastor was Peruvian. You know, growing up. But when you go outside of South Florida, and you, like, when I was a kid and we would visit different churches, I would always see that we were very much like the exception to the rule. We were in the rule, you know. So I see that Christianity or spiritualism in general is growing in South Florida. I've noticed that because I've seen a lot of various churches springing up in areas of the city that I never expected them to spring up, like Wynwood and South Beach. What do you attribute that to? What do you think that this revival of, like, young pastors, because that's the first thing that I noticed. The vast majority of pastors that I'm noticing opening up now are like young. They're like in their 20s or like max like early 30s. You know, back in the day, for you to be a pastor, you have to be like 60, old and graying. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think in general, if you study the like just our society. Millennials, more and more companies, and I know you've done more research than I have, I'm sure, more and more companies will hire younger people, and so I think it's just our generation is taking now that leadership role, is leading our world, and it's not only in the business sector but also in the church world. And so I think that more than ever, even thinking about this, someone like Brad Stevens, who is the coach for Boston Celtics, I think he's 36 years old, or he's in his 30s.
Yeah, he's young.
And he was one of the best, most outstanding coaches. And so even in a role of coaching, a head coach of an NBA basketball team, influential role, very, you know, a prestigious role, right? You're coaching in the NBA. You're such a young coach.
There's only 32 coaches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're such a young coach and you did such a great job.
Yeah.
So I always tell people wisdom is not defined in age. Wisdom, just because you're older, does not make you wiser.
Yeah.
And I think and it's in the Bible, First Timothy 4:12. It's in the New Testament. You can look it up. First Timothy 4:12 says that don't let anyone look down upon you because of your age, but set the example in conduct and in speech and in character. And so I really think I agree with you, but I think our world in general is becoming, there are more younger people leading and are in more influential roles than when our parents, were our age. And so, and I think it's the millennials and so whatever good and bad comes from that.
Well, to follow up with that, I see that the church in general is a good meeting place because it's like everybody kind of puts their guard down when they come into church. They're like, they're good. They're willing to understand and explain and talk from different perspectives and viewpoints. Do you feel that churches in general are becoming a ground for different conversations to be held, or is churches just all about like Christianity and all about like following Jesus and God and those rules? Is it a place where it's a good meeting ground to start talking about other things that are outside of the purview of just religion?
So when you mean churches in general, are you being specific to Christianity?
Yeah, I mean,
Christian churches, or because churches.
I see Christianity first because Christianity is one of the largest sects in South Florida in the country, right? Christianity pretty much like defines the United States, right? It's not like we're not like a Muslim country. The vast majority of people who are practicing any particular type of religion in the United States is probably Christianity. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Muslims might be the
It's growing a lot. It's growing a lot. It's the largest religion, actually.
It's the largest religion worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide.
But I'm talking about like in terms of the United States.
Yeah, the West.
Yeah, in terms of the West, Christianity is basically this is the hub for Christianity.
Yeah.
But being that it's a place that people are willing to gather and talk without having a fight, do you see churches as a breeding ground for new thought on things that are outside of the purview of a religion, such as politics or things that are affecting people on a day-to-day basis, like Black Lives Matter and things along that nature that really are affecting people outside of just like the purview of spirituality? You know what I'm saying? I see churches always as a place where people could come together and talk their differences through, not necessarily like, have to believe in Jesus Christ or in God or anything along those lines, but the atmosphere itself plays to that, where people are willing and able to talk to each other and not fight each other. Do you see that churches in general are opening up their doors to that, or do you think that churches are just primarily staying in their lane when it comes to just trying to follow Jesus and God and just in the religious world?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that could be said about that question. I think.
Yeah, no, it's really packed.
Yeah,
it's
so
compact,
I would say several things. Churches are made up of people.
Okay.
And people, all of us are sinners. We believe that in the Bible, and I think it's evident, and all of us are imperfect. We all have our opinions, and that the opinions can sometimes lead to conflict, and so which is why people will go to a church, right? Someone will go to a church and say, "Oh, so and so said this, or so and so did that," and I'm leaving that church now. And they take that against God, and I tell people, well, how is that God's fault? I mean, it's us. Yeah. Like we have had people that will say things and will voice their opinion on social media, on Facebook, and I'm gonna be honest with you, we've had we've had people in the same church will start arguing or debating, you know, and so when it comes to politics and in our church, we have Republicans and we have Democrats, and that's not the answer. It's not the answer. Is not Republicans. We're going to be sensitive to the Democrat, and we're going to be sensitive to the Republican. We're going to be sensitive to the liberal.
That's kind of hard to do, man.
But to
play the middle in all those particular roles.
But how
everybody's like distancing themselves now into their own little corners,
and that's the problem. That's the problem. Like if I don't agree with
everything you have to say, then I'm bad.
Exactly. No, like I tell people, and I've said this in a preaching, we have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Like I don't agree with everything my wife says.
Yeah.
Even in our politics,
Yeah.
even in our theology,
Yeah.
sometimes we'll disagree on things, and it is okay.
Yeah, to disagree.
And even in the church world, where you have so many different denominations, it's okay to disagree on certain things. There are issues that are secondary issues, and so we need to be okay with disagreeing. If someone feels like they need to protest and they by protesting they take a knee, and that's their right. I will not do that. I don't think it's the best way of doing it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But that's their right.
Yeah.
How why should I take that away from them?
Yeah.
I think there are better ways to do it. But it's not conducing to violence or to anything that is immoral.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Yeah.
So ultimately, to answer your question on one of our services, on our gatherings, our focus is preaching Jesus and preaching the Bible. Like we're not this political church that's gonna have a political candidate. We have politicians and high positions. He was here yesterday actually, and I saw him. We're not gonna have him on stage, and he's not gonna give his speech, or and can't help him.
So you don't let it use it as a soapbox for them to put their views.
We don't want our stage to be used as a campaigning tool or resource for anyone, whether Democrat or Republican, liberal, whatever party they're affiliated to. We're not. We're going to preach the Bible, and we're going to preach Jesus, and then you make that rational decision of where you land.
Where does Jesus come into play with our politics though? That's like that's the cross section of the question. Like, where is Jesus' politics come into regular politics? Like, Jesus was all about feeding the poor and helping out the misfortunate, et cetera, et cetera. And we have people within our government who is completely against that to the other side.
Yeah, but at the same time, Jesus also said the poor will always exist. And in one story, he tells the person, don't give to the poor. She did what was the right thing. And this older lady gave her fragrance, which was expensive to Jesus, and she didn't give it to the poor. And he said she did the right thing. And so I think that there has to be a balance. I don't think Jesus would be, hey, give everything away and don't like. Jesus also says the parable of sowing in fertile ground. And so I think that there is a lack of compassion. I would agree to that. And at the same time, I think that, it's always one spectrum, it's one end, like give it all away. And then there's a person, no, be stingy with it. Don't give it away. He doesn't deserve it. He's been lazy. And it's hard to find a balance. And I
That's
feel
what I'm
like,
saying. Like you're in the church.
You
so
do
like,
need
how
to,
do you find that balance?
You need to be generous. This is what I tell people, even in our church.
Yeah.
Like we have tons of people that want our church to give them money.
Yeah.
We have a process for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we should say yes to every person that comes here and says, I need $1,000 to pay my rent.
Yeah.
I don't think we should do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's right.
Yeah, you're not subsidizing the community to live their life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think I don't know. I don't know what that answer is. I really don't know.
There's a
because
answer
I do
there,
think Jesus for sure endorses and is an advocate for generosity and compassion. And at the same time, Jesus says the poor will always exist. Yeah. Like in other words, you can't always give it away.
You can't overextend yourself in giving everything away.
And then what good is that for? What good is that for you also? I want you to contribute to society. Yeah. I don't want you to always consume. Even in our church, we always say you can either be a consumer or a contributor. And I want you to contribute to society. I want you to work hard, and I want you to pay taxes. I want you to give to society. And at the same time, you should also be a beneficiary of society as well. And so I don't know what that answer is, to be honest with you. I don't know.
I think that's the next paradigm shift in religion in general and churches. I think that's it. I'm not sure if any church or any religion itself is taking that cross on themselves and taking it up. But I know that the vast majority of people are starting to coalesce those two ideas, because it's hard to always just be like on one point, this is the teachings of my religion, and then on another point, this is how I'm gonna live my life. Because you can't say, I want you to pay taxes and be a contributor to society, but then at the same time, you have a company and you're the CEO of the company and you're skirting taxes by sending your money to Aruba or whatever.
And that's wrong.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
like,
wrong.
Those are the two contradicting points
that
are just like, at what point is it going to be like, we have to like start connecting the dots. We're actually doing the things that the religion is intended to do, to like try to better society in general, because that's basically where it's coming from. You know, it's not like it's coming from a point of division. It's coming from a point of unity. At what point do you start putting together the sticks that say, okay, these are the sticks that we need to do to build this unity?
I don't think it's ever gonna be. It's never gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
And this is the way I see it too, Darwin. I don't see it as it's the president's response. Yes, he's responsible. Whether it was President Obama and President Trump, they are responsible for leading our country. But I tell people, be the difference that you want to see take place. And actually, I think Gandhi did say something similar to that. You know, be the difference that you want to see, or something similar to that. And I agree 100%. It's like, you know what? Like, I can be generous. I can be a blessing to someone. I can help someone. I can serve. And so and I know you and I have had these conversations. To me, what would really
we go into this forever. If we talk to this, we'll go talk for hours.
Upsets me, or I guess like I think it's hypocritical is when you're like, well, why doesn't the president do this? Or why isn't our country more generous? And you
aren't
like,
generous.
And you're stingy.
Yes.
You know,
you're the stingy person.
Stingiest person you've ever met.
Yeah.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
So like, or why, President Trump's not compassionate, or whoever, Obama this, or whichever president, Bush and all that stuff. And it's like, but what are you doing?
Yeah. Stop placing blame on others.
Like if we play our role, our church, like I can't, as a church, we give 25% of our money, our tithing money goes out to missions, different missions.
Yeah.
Whether it's for evangelism or to serve.
Yeah.
We're constantly serving schools. We're constantly serving. We just had several weeks ago 3 or 4 different lunches and dinners for teachers, because it was Teacher Appreciation Week. We had teachers here, from Coral Reef High School, I believe, or from one of our schools right down the road, locally. And so, and that's just one example of the plethora of examples that I can give you of things that we've done. We have a business local, Palmetto Bay Association that meets here once a month. Business leaders from Palmetto Bay, they meet here. Most of them are not Christian.
Yeah,
they're not. But they meet here. What do? We host them. They use our facility. They have a lunch. We help serve. We help volunteer, and they, and so I do think that the church has not done their role. Most of the churches have not done their role of being that
community resource
of generosity and compassion.
Yeah,
But I think that is also changing as well. And I think that the younger people, the millennials, and not that everything has been like, they've been perfect. I think they brought some good changes. I think there's other things that we do need to change, but I think that they have a desire for social justice, and it's and that has infiltrated in the church.
That was basically the crux of the question, because social justice is basically the key issue right now that a lot of millennials are confronting and are dealing with right now on a daily basis. They feel like they were promised something, like everybody was equal and everybody should have the same access to certain resources and things like that. But then when we grew up, we noticed that that's not the way of the world. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, but what I would say is this, Darwin, and millennials are very passionate about social justice.
Yeah.
But I would love to ask 20 of them. Tell me this year, how many hours have you volunteered from your time without nothing in return, no hidden agenda? How many hours have you volunteered?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of their answers would be pretty shameful.
Yeah.
And that's awful.
Yeah, because
that's very hypocritical.
Yeah.
And so I love your passion, but do something about it too.
All right.
And our church should do something about it. Church in general, Christ Fellowship should do something about it. And I think we are. I think we can always get better. But that's the part that to me is like, okay, that to me is dead wrong, because you're just pointing the fingers, and wanting
somebody else to fix it.
Can our administration be better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know?
But you could be better as well.
Exactly.
So if people wanted to reach out to you or come to church, things like that, where they can reach out to you? Where can anybody who needs any help or anything along those lines in the community?
Sure, yeah. So the campus that I'm in is Christ Fellowship Palmetto Bay. It's in, obviously, the area of Palmetto Bay, 8900 Southwest 168th Street.
Okay.
We have a service on Saturday nights at 6 p.m. and then 3 services on Sunday, 9, 10:45 and 12:30. You can reach me. My email address is Cardenas. So that's C again, ARD as in dog, N as in Nancy, AS as in Samuel, at CF Miami. So C as in Carlos, F as in Francisco, Miami.org. So Cardenas at CFMiami.org. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Cardenas84. You can, add me on Facebook, so I'm very involved on social media.
Sounds good. And where are your other campuses located?
Yeah, other campuses. So we have our West Kendall campus.
Okay.
We have our Redland campus, Homestead campus, Miami Springs,
okay,
downtown, and Coral Gables.
Wow, so you're really spread out throughout the city.
Yeah. Downtown, Coral Gables, Miami Springs, Palmetto Bay, Redland, Homestead, and West Kendall.
And all the other locations have the same like Sunday services and things like that?
Yeah. So
same times?
So not the same times. Some campuses have less services. We are the campus that has the most. Us and West Kendall have the same exact amount. West Kendall has a Saturday night, 6 p.m., Sunday 9 a.m., 10:45, and a Spanish 12:30. So all the other campuses have just about the same amount, but they, their times are similar to ours.
And where can they go online to look for those schedules?
CFMiami.org.
All right, so CFMiami.org. If anybody would like to go to church on Sunday morning, listen to some of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And if anybody does want to reach out to Carlos, you already heard his Twitter, his email, ccardenas@cfmiami.org. Appreciate you, Carlos, for coming on.
Yeah, I loved it. I love being here.
Thank you for talking to us. Quick little insight on spirituality in South Florida. Until the next time, cógelo con take it easy, people. Late. I want to thank my guest, Pastor Carlos Cardenas, for coming on to the show and talking to us, chopping it up about how religion is affecting South Florida. And I want to thank you for listening to the show and subscribing. If you like the show, feel free to holler at me, WhatsApp at phresherfresh.com. I love you guys. Thank you so much for your time. Hasta la próxima. Cógelo con take it easy. It's your boy D-Fig. Holla.